do Long Box Diving, where we pull comics out of the long box. I've got X Factor #2. It's been in my pull list, right? I've been meaning to read it for forever, and so finally got to it. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised with this. Normally with like newer versions of X Factor comics, they're really dark and it's hard to see what's going on in this comic. This comic felt like an X-Men comic, which I was not expecting. The original X Factor team were the original X-Men team. So you had Angel, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Bobby Drake, and that was it. There's no Professor here. He's dead. But yeah, I was surprised by this comic. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it for a couple reasons, right? Mostly we got interesting character problems, right? The characters have flaws, and we're kind of exploring it. These flaws are based on the history of the X-Men, so they're there because of their past, right? We've got an interesting villain who does villainous things for a decent reason, and I'll get into that later. We've got the Thug, right? And so he's Tower, the Mutant Tower, the Menace Tower, and he's the guy they're focused on. But he's still a patsy, right? Which means he's not the main villain here, and that's great. I love it when we have villains with patsies, right? They're not the ones on the front lines dealing with the heroes. They're scheming, and that's always cool to have. But we opened up this comic and we're focused on Jean Grey, and so this was something I talked about earlier. Jean Grey is having nightmares of her past. She was the Phoenix. She was reborn, and she came back to see Scott and Warren and is like, I'm back with you guys. I'm happy. She's missed a lot. She has not seen a lot of what's gone on in the past for the X-Men. Madeline Pryor has been Jean Grey for a while, and there's a lot that's happened, especially with Scott, right? So there's some tension there, and Jean Grey is confused, and she's having nightmares about that time and that part of her life where she's being taken over by the Phoenix Force, and then when she's awake, she's confused and she's alone. The people she used to love and hang out with all the time do not accept her anymore, right? They're standoffish, they're cold, and she doesn't understand why, because nobody will say. Like, Scott does not love her, but nobody will say why, and so she's stuck and confused and alone, and it's so good. That's the kind of writing I really like. She's thinking to herself, why do I feel alone? Why does it seem that there's no place for Marvel Girl in the world? That's just, it's human problems, right? These are the kind of problems you can imagine. Like, if somebody goes off for years and things happens in their life to the people they love, when they get back, those people aren't the same. You haven't changed. They have. They've changed. But you haven't changed, and you don't know why there's such a problem. It's really good character development. I like it. And then we get the opposite side of it, right? We get Warren talking to Scott, and Warren's like, dude, you should just tell her. Warren has it straightforward. He's like, dude, just tell her. Be upfront, be honest, say, hey, look, I'm married to Madeline Pryor. I love Madeline Pryor. She may look like you, but unfortunately, she's not you. We had a kid, right? And Scott's just angry. He's like, I can't do that. What would you know? You're just a playboy. And of course, Warren gets offended at that, which, again, why wouldn't you? Is somebody who you're trying to help, your friends you're trying to help, you're giving good, wise advice. Say, hey, look, just talk to her. Say, this is what's going on. I was married. I had a wife. I thought she was you. Turns out she wasn't. We had a kid. We lost the kid. It's like, you have to explain that. You can't just leave her sitting in the cold wondering what she did. She didn't do anything, but you're acting like she did, right? You need to be upfront with her. And Scott's shutting himself off and saying, no, you're just a playboy. What would you know about my problems, right? It's like, Scott's got to open up, man. Scott's got to be willing to say, hey, look, this is what's going on, and be honest. And he's not. He's shutting himself, he's closing himself off from advice, from actually dealing with the problem, all because he used to love her and he doesn't want to hurt her, right? Scott doesn't want to hurt Jean Grey, so he's hurting Jean Grey, and he won't understand that. But again, that's such a human thing. That is something you will see in life, is there are people who very much think like that. And it's good character development, man. And it's based on his past. And if you've been wondering where Bobby and Hank are, the other two members of his team, they've been walking around the street. So, X Factor, gotta preface this, X Factor is supposed to be undercover secret identities, right? Secret identities from their secret identities. So they're basically like a government agency acting. Their role is to go find mutants, take them in, and train them to control their powers. Makes sense, keeps them out of the public eye, makes people happier with the state of mutants because mutants aren't running amok. So they're walking through the middle street to meet with Vera. I guess she has some relation with Beast. I don't remember well what her relationship with Beast was. But Beast and Bobby are walking down the street, and Bobby instinctively uses his ice powers, and Beast freaks out on it. He's like, don't use your ice powers. So this is coming from the big blue furry man, right? He's saying, hey, Bobby, don't use your ice powers. It's too conspicuous. I have blue fur on my face. Nobody will ever see that. I thought it was real funny. Is the irony of him freaking out about Bobby when everyone can literally see Hank's face, right? He's not hiding it. He has a hat on. He doesn't even have glasses, right? The Superman disguise doesn't work. So it's real funny. We do get a scene of Jean Grey and Scott training a pyrokinetic mutant. I don't think it's Pyro. I'm not sure who it is. But again, that's cool character development to see. Hey, look, they've essentially taken on the role of Professor X. We're working with you to train your powers to get you to be a better mutant. It's cool. Hank and Bobby meet up with Vera. I found this funny. This was interesting. Hank is out of the loop here. I've always seen Hank as probably the most old-fashioned of the original X-Men, right? Bobby and Warren were always more progressive, if you want to use that. Sort of, yeah. And Jean Grey and Colossus are products of their time, but I've always seen Hank as being the straight-laced character, right? He's the most old-fashioned. So he meets Vera again, and she's changed a little bit, apparently. Apparently she's changed quite a bit. So for Hank, who is straight-laced, U.S. capitalist kind of thing, probably would put him on the conservative edge of things. You have Vera here, who went to college. Ooh, the big evil college. But she started listening to left-wing music and reading books from South America. Oh no. I can't keep a straight face. But yeah, Vera's passion project is she's now a far more progressive person than Hank is by far, by a lot. I would wager her ideology is somewhere near communism at this point in time. Socialism probably. She reads books from South America, and listens to left wing music. Um, as funny as that is, like Bobby straight up says, "Hey, look, do you have any songs by this person who talks about the trouble of the working class as the rich people are putting them down, right?" And so, and of course, she does, right? So yeah, she's that, like, that's the kind of pursuit she would. Books from South America, she's probably looking at people like Che Guevara and other uh, rebels from their governments, right? And so she's looking at those communist ideas and socialistic ideas that people put forth. And in the 80s, like, a lot of it was either Russia or South America. At least, like, in the U.S.'s consciousness, it was either Russia or South America, and Russia was in South America. So, it, like, I mean, yeah, when you're talking about left-wing music, and you're talking, I don't know what they mean by left-wing music, by the way, but when you're talking about South America books, you're probably looking at that kind of thing. She's following the socialistic ideas, and Hank is not a person, as far as I can tell, who follows those mindsets. I mean, he uses "Oh my stars and garters" as a curse word, so he's probably pretty straight laced when he's like, "Oh my stars and garters." Sorry, Hank. You're a smart man, just not a smart man. Of course, then Tower comes in, and of course, Tower is basically Ant-Man. He can shrink, and then he can get really tall. That's it. That's all his power set is. It's not even a cool, like, Ant-Man. It's just, I can shrink, and then I can get tall. And he's fighting with Hank, but Tower literally only wants Hank. And Tower wins, because while Beast may be strong and super fast and hyper athletic and has very good agility and is really smart, Tower is big. So when Bobby and Vera wake up from the one hit they took, they call X Factor, and then Scott, Warren, and Jean show up in these uniforms of government agents, and it feels like the X-Files, right? They're all coming in with their briefcases, and they're scoping out the scene, and they're taking care of Bobby and Vera, and I like the premise. I do like the premise. I would like to see more of this premise in the current era of X-Men, um, which is something I think we might see. I think it is X Factor right now who's doing it, but I don't know. I haven't actually got into reading any of the new stuff after House of X, but yeah, I would like to see, hey, look, this is our secret government agency that's actually for mutants, to take care of mutants, but run by mutants, and so they're here to save mutants, right? Um, I want to see that. We see the man who paid Tower to capture Hank, the Doctor. I don't know what his name is. Hank knows him. I have no clue who he is. But this guy was supposed to be dead. And this guy has captured Hank and wants Hank for his mind. Like, there's some formula that this guy just cannot figure out, and who's the smartest man? Hank. So that's what they're going to do, is get him to solve their problem, right? This doctor, the bald doctor, double crosses Tower and calls X Factor on him and is like, hey, look, I know where a mutant is. Can you come get him? And so X Factor chases Tower. Like, very good villain move. You get rid of your patsy. the Doctor, and of course, he thinks X Factor is a legitimate we're hunting mutants organization. He does not know they are actually mutants. So from his point of view, he's hiring people designed to hunt down and kill mutants, right? And he called the wrong people. But the Bald Doctor has a sick son who's a mutant, and the Bald Doctor needs Beast to solve the cure, so he shoots Beast with a numbing agent. And that way they can use the cure and test it on Beast. Pretty straightforward, pretty despicable, but he's also trying to save his son because his son is a malformed alien. It's like his son is really small and has a super bulbous head, and he can read minds, sort of, ish, maybe. But yeah, like the Doctor does not want that forced on his son, so he's gonna find a cure for mutantdom. And all it took was putting the integers in the right place. Who knew? X Factor fights Tower, and they get beat up by Tower. This guy can grow 15 feet tall, and he apparently has all the strength in the world. He can beat a telepathic and a telekinetic and Angel and an ice powers and Scott. Except Scott, he can't beat Scott because Scott just shoots a laser beam at his forehead and Tower falls down. If that isn't a parallel to David and Goliath, I don't know what is. Yeah, Scott just shoots a single laser beam, hits him right in the forehead, and Tower falls down. The end. But yeah, to wrap it all up, Beast has been subjected to the mutant cure to turn him into a human, and Tower's been captured by X-Force and is going to be interrogated for a price. Dun dun dun. Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It's an enjoyable comic with good character development. I have the third one. I will probably read the third issue, because I really like this one. It's a pretty straightforward, here's what's going on. It made me laugh in a part, which is always good. And so it's a good comic. It's not anything spectacular, but it's also not terrible. So yay. And it's not freaking dark. You can see what's going on in each one of the panels. I love that. Yay. I'll see you next time in Long Bucks. Bye.